another episode of Lunch and Life with Robin and Sharon. I'm Sharon Holand, Gelfand, your co-host. I'm a functional, holistic, and lifestyle nutritionist working with women over 40 to get to the root of the most common health complaints with at-home testing and flexible food choices so you have more energy, less stress, and can feel great again. And I'm here with my co-host, Robin.
Hi, Sharon. I am Robin Joy Meyers, a former molecular geneticist turned fear strategist, and I empower women to embrace the 3 C's of life: choice, chance, and change, and to find your true joy, which means just own you.
Robin, we were talking about September, about back to school, transition, and so much happening, and the stress and the overwhelm of what's going on. I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to unpack all of that in the coming weeks.
September is a huge month, and as you were saying, it's a huge transition month. But if you look at the calendar, according to the news, right, because the news puts out kind of themes of the month, September is self-awareness month, self-improvement month, all kinds of themes around food and nutrition. And it really comes down to really the transition of getting into fall, right? Summer is over. It's kind of people get back to work and back to school and back to routine. The difference being, this isn't the ordinary fall in September because I think the world hasn't had the typical summer. We're not going into the typical fall. Most of us are still staying at home. School's not normal, right? So I think also we've all thought that COVID and this whole routine of COVID would have been done by now. And I think people are very uncomfortable. So I think stress levels are very high.
Very high. They're overwhelmed. Even some of the colleges are already sending kids home because of things that are going on. And it's enough to just have people get paralyzed and not know what to do. And then when you are stressed and overwhelmed, it affects your physical health. It affects your gut. It affects your immune system. It affects how you think and how you show up. And it can really spiral downward because then it's the holidays. Right, for the Jewish calendar, it's the Jewish New Year coming up, and then you have Thanksgiving coming up, and then Christmas and all these other holidays. You're right, we're not in that same mode of what we used to be, and who knows when there's going to be a vaccine or what's going to be readily available. I was just listening to the news on how restaurants aren't even going to be open in New York City for indoor dining. The stress levels for all those entrepreneurs.
That's amazing what you said, because what happens when the weather gets cold and then you can't go out, and how many people rely on either eating out or even with the holidays, people coming into town. So what does that look like? Because time is going by so fast, as we both know. And so how do we unpack that? How do we get into the right mindset just to even deal with it? There's so many layers of life right now. So it's not just getting back to the work schedule or the school schedule. And for those kids, my kids now and your kids are older and in their 20s. So thank goodness they're not going to college and getting back from college. But you do, as a parent, get into that mindset of school starting. Whether it's college or high school, school is starting. So you kind of ramp up with a little bit of excitement, like that routine is over and go back and get back. And so suddenly,
at the house.
Yeah, you get the mindset going. And then it's like, school's lasted, I don't even think some colleges lasted for a week. I think it was like literally 2 days. And can you imagine unloading your kid into the dorm, setting up the dorm, and 2 days later, packing up the dorm to get home?
Yeah.
But then they're back. So that whole family dynamic is, you get them ready, you send them, they come back, and it all changes again. Everything keeps changing, and it's the unknown of when will it stop.
So let's talk about how we can unpack this, each week of understanding the stress and, being able to look at some tips of what to do, incorporate even some of the tips that we had given last month for the detoxing, just bringing it forward to, all right, the stress, putting the oxygen masks on ourselves first. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't show up and have that energy or the wherewithal to help anybody else when we're suffocating. It'll be a great opportunity to unpack so that our audience will be able to do it in a simple, easy way that won't feel as overwhelming, because they'll have some ideas on how to pay attention on a daily basis. So, I kind of thought about, well, should we start with the body? Should we start with the mind? But you and I know, like, it really does start with the mind. So I'm going to throw the ball in your court, Robin, and take that long pass and go.
I was thinking about it when we were talking about how we're going to handle this segment. And I was really thinking about, we talk about a routine and things like that. And I think one of the most important things to start with is that I think everyone needs to give everybody space and permission to have space. So I think if you haven't done this yet and you aren't used to communicating, like my family growing up did not communicate. You were told to be quiet, whether it's good or bad, just be quiet. So learn to communicate and learn to really respect when someone in the household says, I need my space, and not to take it personally. So if someone doesn't want to come down for dinner right away, or someone needs their time or doesn't want, like, you don't have to be a group all the time, and really be able to take those minutes, 5 minutes especially at least, to just take the time to breathe and really maybe have that family meeting, when everyone's coming back in, whether it's the college kid or the grandparents are coming over, how things are going to look, and say, listen, here are the ages of the family. You might have young ones, you might have old ones, but really respect each other, to say everyone has an opinion, everyone's opinion is respected, and you all have a voice. I think it's really important to set that standard right from the get-go.
I love that as the first tip, and it's what's so fascinating. And I mean, our minds are always working on the same page. I do my weekly group coaching calls, and one of my clients' husband is a teacher and was starting to go back to school. So her morning routine before school, before the summertime, was to get up first thing in the morning. She had her space, she did her journaling, she's started her day. It was quiet and she loved it. And then her husband set the alarm at the same time, and now she was feeling all of this stress and overwhelm of, whoa, not that he's doing anything wrong, but that he's invading her morning routine and her peace and her quiet. And so we talked about ways of, giving the space of, he needs to do that. So what can you do? How can you shift your perspective, your point of view on how you approach this? And as she was talking, she came up with her own solution of, I have noise canceling earbuds. So if I put those on and I go to just a different room in the house, I can still have my morning routine, and I won't feel any resistance or anger or any feelings towards my husband, who needs to go to work, and he's not doing anything wrong. I'm just reacting. So that's a perfect point of either, having the conversation, or within yourself, taking a step back and allowing some light in so that you can shift your own perspective of how you're coming into this situation.
I think that's great. That's a perfect example. And I think another example would be to really accept everyone's comments with gratitude. If you know that it's coming out of a place of gratitude, and I think some point in my life you had told me to do this, not to take it as a criticism, to take it that it's kindness and it's gratitude, and people are voicing their opinions, and to be thankful for that. So it's not necessarily that you're being criticized. It's just someone is trying to give you advice, because it is tricky. And, let's take New York, for example. Houses and apartments are smaller. So you have to be able to really define space, define if it's workspace, define if it's family space. So if you're in an apartment, for example, and the living room is the living room, then define where work is going to be. Is it going to be in a bedroom? Is it going to be in a corner? Is it going to be in a closet? Frankly, it might have to be in a closet that gets turned into an office space. You just have to get a little more flexible as to what's going to happen.
Yeah. It's the self-awareness and awareness, right? And just becoming conscious. And interestingly, it is self-awareness month.
Um,
So it's a perfect way to get started is with that, because then if you can lead with that on a daily basis, it will really just relieve that stress, which will then also aid in your body's ability to digest. And we'll go more into that part of it next week. But being able to do that, and being aware of the thoughts, you know, it just reminds me of another one of my clients in this conversation, who her head just was spinning with all these different thoughts. It was like ADD. She just would go from one to next to the next. And so the idea of like, when I have that thought, let me put it into a boat. Let me just let it push it off into the ocean. Another thought, put it into the boat and keep pushing, send it away. Acknowledge it, know that it's real, but put it into that boat, let it sail away so that you could just come back to being present and focusing on what you need to do. That self-awareness is huge, because then it can lead into your ability to do everything else you need to do.
yeah, and I think living presently is huge, right? That word presence is enormous. It's a huge word because you really do have to live really presently. And so I say this all the time. If you don't respond right away, or you need a chance to pause, or someone wants a response from you and you have to say, listen, I'll get back to you. There's nothing wrong with that, even if it's on a phone call. Like, you don't have to give an answer right away. You really don't. Someone had said to me, and I'm looking at this quote because I wrote it down, because someone said, but fear is a reaction and courage is a decision. And I said, nice, true, but it's how you react to the fear of it. So if you take time to breathe and say, so what is it telling me? Like, you do have to acknowledge these things, but you also have to say, how am I going to react? Because that's what changes the course.
Yeah. What is it? Yeah.
Exactly. If it's the immediate reaction of, the world's ending, well, that's a whole different mindset than, let me think about this and how can I find the good in this, right? There are the elements of silver linings along the way. I don't know if my English was proper in that. There are the elements of silver linings in all of this. And it's not the, I'm going to be the optimist in everything, but you have to be able to find what works for you and realize that we're going to get through this. We're all going to get through this, but I think communication is going to be key, and the self-awareness for yourself, because you have to really, as you said, take care of yourself in order to take care of everything and everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that also reminded me of something else that I was listening to the other day. I don't remember what podcast it was, but how our minds really can't discern between what's real and what's not, right? So when we have a conversation, a perceived conversation through our own filters, then that's not real, right? We're creating that in our heads, and our bodies will react a certain way to it versus even something that is actually real. So if you can have that choice in your head, is to create the positive conversation coming back to you, right? Like bringing that attention and that awareness to self. If you can create that positive conversation with yourself, that your mind will think it's real. So that'll also just change all the receptors, and even just the serotonin, the dopamine, like everything, the oxytocin of the feel good for our body.
Right. And I think it's a good point. And I think that's why you have to pause and, not necessarily give that immediate response that you want to normally give. That's why you don't immediately respond to emails, right? You just have to kind of sit for a minute and say, because you have to be able to filter out the real and the not so real, the unreal.
Robin, this was fantastic. I think it's such a great way to start off the month of September. So why don't you just wrap it up for us?
So September is a big self-awareness month. So, to wrap it up, be present with your family, be kind to each other, respect each other's space, and just listen to one another. And most importantly, you don't have to answer to things right away, and take care of yourself. Still find that time, that 5 minutes to take time for yourself so you can breathe.
As I take a deep breath, thank you so much. It's been fantastic. Yes, right? Everybody, right now, just close your eyes. Nice deep breath, because we don't breathe enough. So this has been wonderful. And as always, I love unpacking lunch with you, and we'll see everyone next week.
Take care.